Hi, everybody, and welcome to You Be on the Move, brought to you by your friends here at UrbanBound. As a reminder, UrbanBound is relocation management software that dramatically brings the cost of relocation down for healthcare organizations while simultaneously delivering an infinitely better experience to your relocating candidates. I'm one of the co-founders of UrbanBound and one of your co-hosts here today on the podcast. With me is my fellow co-host and co-founder, Jeff Ellman, who's going to introduce our guests today. So Jeff, take it away.
Thank you, Michael. And today we got three Chicago guys on here talking about healthcare. You probably think that we're talking about the Cubs, the Bears, White Sox, deep dish pizza, but no. We have a thought leader in the healthcare space, and we're going to learn so much with Michael Stamatinos today. I'm going to quickly introduce Michael, and I'm going to dive into some questions for Michael. So today, we're thrilled to have Michael Stamatinos, an inspiring healthcare leader, connector, advisor, and investor, joining us in a very thought-provoking conversation. Michael's deeply rooted passion for providing access, we're talking about access today within healthcare, led him to starting Amorphi, an advancing healthcare innovation consortium. As an experienced healthcare leader, connector, advisor, and investor to numerous digital healthcare startups globally, Michael is dedicated to shaping the future of healthcare and ensuring the adoption of groundbreaking innovations. His journey led him to create and co-found several impactful businesses using his unique and highly successful relationship equity principle. We want to learn more about that later on as well, too, Michael. Michael spent close to 2 decades fine-tuning his craft and transforming the healthcare landscape, not only in the future, but even today. As a son of Greek immigrants, Michael credits his parents for instilling him with relentless work ethic, grit, and determination. He's the host of the Advancing Healthcare Innovation Show, which we were thrilled to be a guest of about a year ago. He's a published author specifically of something I love reading, Getting to the Decision Maker, and co-founded a mastermind unit, a New York-based nonprofit that fundraises for local children's charities. Michael, we are so happy. I'm happy. You're happy. We're all happy that this was able to work out today. And I'm looking at two Michaels right now, who, by the way, remind me of like two long-lost brothers. So this is a really exciting podcast for me and for everyone who's watching. So, Michael, can you share a little bit more about yourself and how you ended up working within the healthcare industry?
Yeah, of course. So, Jeff, Michael, so awesome to be here. It's nice to have a role reversal. Usually I'm the one that's doing the interviews, so to be interviewed is a little bit of a different experience. So in terms of healthcare, as kind of noted in my bio, I grew up working for my dad. My mom and dad, they own restaurants, immigrants. So in New York, you either are working in construction or you work in diners. Right? In Illinois, they call them family restaurants, but they're diners. So loved working with people to the point of I knew I wanted to become a clinical psychologist, so I went to school for that, finished my training, and then I realized that that's not what I wanted to do for the rest of my career. I just had a hard time helping people that didn't want to help themselves. So got back into healthcare more on the biz dev side of things, and then fast forward a number of years later, innovation, which I think is probably something that is desperately, continuously needed today to shape the future of health. And I say health because healthcare is a subset of health. I'm focused on that, focused on access and leadership. Those are the two things that I'm extraordinarily passionate about. And I think they are the things that innovation adoption hinges on, which is access and leadership, access to the right people in the right place that can give you feedback, and then leadership by taking an actual measured risk. You know, when you think about innovation, it's about being able to add value to many and incrementally getting better over long stretches of time. And I'm a byproduct of that. I didn't wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to be this thought leader. It just kind of happens over a long stretch of time.
All right. Having spent so much of your career in and around healthcare, particularly on the innovation side, where have you, like, what have been the biggest changes that you've seen? And in your mind, where do you kind of see healthcare going from here?
So as wild as the last 36 months have been, I don't think there's ever been a better time to be innovating within healthcare. And I think it's for a few different reasons. It's because there's a shift in leadership, and there are leaders now that are coming into some really influential roles, and they're not necessarily tech savvy leaders. Rather, they're tech dependent leaders. They view innovation as not
Yep.
just a nice to have. They view it as a must have. They view it as a differentiator. They view it as a way of enhancing employee and patient experience. So the landscape has shifted. So before, when there was sort of like a bottleneck of, and you kind of think about some of the leaders that were in those chairs and the diversity of leaders that are now coming into these roles, not just C-suite, but also other decision-making roles, VP, folks that are in charge of P&Ls, they look at innovation in a very different lens. And I think that's what's made me most excited about everything. And despite all the challenges, and let's be honest, when you're innovating, you're actually not winning most of the time. So that's what keeps me going, about being able to help advance society at large. I don't think there's any better way to do that than to be innovating within health.
Yeah.
Michael,
Maybe
I know
for
you've had a chance to, help. Yeah, you've had a chance to help hundreds of organizations, and I've had a chance to watch your podcast. And there's a lot of thought leaders that have joined around the topic of HR and innovation within recruiting and the challenges that healthcare systems are facing today with attracting and retaining talent. Can you share some of the most innovative things that you've seen within the HR side of healthcare?
Yeah, so when I look at innovation, naturally there's an inclination to look at problems. So the way that I view the world, everything is sort of 80-20. And workforce is in that bucket of the problems that are producing 80% of the issues, and it's workforce. As far as how health systems are viewing workforce, the more innovative ones, and this isn't actually rocket science, is they try to figure out how can we be more flexible. They look at the old systems of how things were being done and they say, hey, that worked 20 years ago or 30 or 40 years ago, and society has shifted. The outcome is what everyone wants, which is to deliver amazing care to a patient and for have folks work in a great workplace. It's just gotten more difficult to do that because of the fact that people work differently today. But I think the ones that are innovating well have struck a very fine balance in understanding that there's room for flexibility, and there's also room to be able to trial new things on a smaller scale to risk to see, hey, can these experiments that we're working on, what are we learning from them? That's what the best organizations are doing is they're experimenting, they're trialing, they're measuring, and they're constantly trying to have these improvements. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have the right people in the right spots and the right seats, there's really no way that you can actually get things done.
I just have one follow-on question, Michael, then I'll hand it back over to you. But can you give an example of what you just shared?
Yeah, so like for example, normally with nurses, let's just take nurses for example, historically they work 12-hour shifts. Well, when you look at the workforce today on the number of nurses that are retiring and they're, at the age that they're at, there's a large group of new nurses that are coming in, predominantly mostly female, and there are certain life circumstances that happen. For example, if they want to have a family and expand into a family, it's really difficult for them to actually want to work a 12-hour shift. So what some health systems have done, and I'm not going to name names here, just so I just don't think it's appropriate, but what some health systems have done is they said, look, instead of you wanting to work a 12-hour shift, what if you worked a 4-hour shift or a 6-hour shift? Again, this isn't something that is so outside of the box. It's basically saying, hey, how do we frame this up differently? What if we could give you time to pick the kind of shifts that you want that are more suitable for your life, for your family, and you can still help patients, you can still do bedside things, and yet have the flexibility to be there for your family at the same time. Organizations that understand this and are doing this at scale have like massive, massive gains. And others just don't have a willingness to do it. And I think it's just because they're maybe stuck in an older mentality, more or less a fixed mindset as opposed to a growth mindset. However, when you're starting to see this bottleneck open up because of these new leaders that are new moms. For example, if you're a leader in healthcare 20 years ago and you were to look at some of the C-suite and executives, you basically see the same types of people. And now you're starting to see different faces that you can associate with and say, hey, that person's like me. That's the workforce is now made up of leaders that are showcasing what the actual workforce is. And That's actually really helpful.
Yeah. So one of the reasons we started Urban Bound is because we saw this same problem where companies often had to kind of fish from a larger pond to find talent, especially for really hard to fill roles. And yet they were all dropping the ball at the same point in the process. When the person had to relocate for the job, they were just throwing money at them and saying, "Good luck, we'll see you when you get here." And obviously, this problem is very much a defining characteristic right now of the healthcare labor market, where you just simply have to look beyond your own backyard to fill physician roles, nursing roles, etc. What are you seeing the best healthcare organizations do to attract talent outside their market? Are there any interesting innovations that you've seen, or any really unique, approaches
Um,
that are
I mean,
helping you win?
again, getting back to the problem, I read a stat somewhere that we're short 3.2 million jobs within healthcare. So when you think about it, where are you pulling from? You're pulling talent from other health systems, and to be able to do that, what is it that's going to make someone want to uproot and leave and go somewhere else? I mean, the first and foremost thing is you might say better pay, and we're in a market where that is the case. Wages are definitely higher. In other instances, it could just be better quality of life in terms of where they want to live in the country. Maybe they're not so excited about Januaries and Februaries in Chicago, which is very much an acquired taste, and they would much rather live somewhere else. What are they going to be able to do to make that attractive? As far as innovations that I've seen, and this isn't blowing smoke, but not many have actually done better than to say, hey, here's why you come here, and here's a list of some of the attractions that you have in this city. And it's on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. That's not very innovative at all. And if anything, what's happening is it's based on a very strong recommendation of a peer that might already be working somewhere
Hmm.
that says, hey, the culture here is really good. It's really unique. I work with really amazing people. Like someone who is satisfied with their colleagues, and I'll say is content with their pay, meaning they think it's fair market value. They're not looking to leave. They're looking to leave when they don't feel like they're heard, when they're trying to give their best ideas, and it just kind of goes into a black abyss, and they're not appreciated. And that's when people start looking. But where do they start? They start by talking to their friends. Hey, you work over here. What do you think about that? Is it worth going? And that's kind of really how it's been working. Is that very innovative? No. But in terms of how trustworthy is it? I'd say the organizations that have built a lot of trust with their team members have probably an amazing referral program.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're seeing more and more pieces of software that are out there specific to healthcare organizations to help them track referrals and to build referral programs, knowing that that's where a lot of the top talent is coming from, as a trusted friend that you went to college with or high school with or whoever might be medical school with. What I'm curious about too is there's this, what I call a very dangerous trend where everyone is talking about the challenges they have with retention of physicians, nurses, APPs. But when you actually go back to when they first joined the organization, the reason why I say it's dangerous is that most of them had no support with their move. They were just given up to $15,000, submit receipts. We hope to see you on your start date, and we hope it goes well. But why are so many organizations, when we talk about like the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset, why are so many still fixed on treating relocation as compensation versus actually giving a benefit and having someone feel supported?
It boils down to the problem priority stack. So they have a stack of problems that they're working through on a day-to-day basis. And where does that land on the stack of priorities? And I would venture to say that prior to this new movement, this shift in the marketplace, that probably wasn't, if you think about it from an iceberg perspective, it was probably a problem. It was below the surface of the water. Now, mind you, the vast majority of the iceberg is below the surface of the water. So I'd venture to say it's a pretty big problem. It's just that it wasn't top of mind. Dealing with putting out fires, trying to fill roles, like they're just going through the day-to-day minutiae. I mean, if you were to just sit back in the life of an administrator or a nurse or a physician that's around, I mean, these are not people that have a lot of time on their hands. They're really busy. And that leads to what I would call like a whirlwind of things that are happening, and you just get caught up in things. And next thing you know, a year's gone by and you're still doing the same thing that you did last year and the year before because you just haven't gotten around to it. But when it's top of mind, when it's a big pain point, when they start to realize that they're hiring people and they're not staying around for more than a year, well, what happened? And it really boils down to like, well, did you prime them? Did you prime them for success? At what point did you do that? And that halo effect is a very real thing. And if they feel the love, if they feel appreciated early on from the get-go, you probably have more of a chance. And there's not many that do that really well until, obviously Urban Bound came about and really started to change that. But that really wasn't top of mind. So I'd say it's that's probably the main reason, is because it just hasn't been at the forefront. And there's so many other competing priorities.
Right. Yeah. They definitely have their hands full, that's for sure. So that makes sense. As you look, over the course of, your career thus far, and you've worked with so many organizations that are, on the cutting edge or the bleeding edge even of, the new innovations that are coming out in healthcare, what's something that you look back and you think makes you really proud, that you were involved in, helping to facilitate or make happen or breathe life into or whatever that might be?
Yeah, I think the cool thing about working with emerging companies is that you get to be really creative. So I think we were created by a creator to be creative. There's no better place to do that than in an early stage entity. Because when you want to create a new process and you're like, hey, how do we do this? Like, here, blank canvas, go ahead and do it. In terms of the things that I'm most proud of, I would probably say helping folks think through who really is their customer. Because I can't tell you how many conversations that I have and we're like, we just need to talk to the CFO of this hospital and we'll be fine. And that's a little bit easier said than done. Like, who really is the ultimate decision maker? Yeah, maybe they're signing off on an agreement when you're talking about it being millions of dollars. They're flying at a 50,000 foot level. That's not necessarily someone that is dealing with it on a day in, day out basis. So what I feel most proud of is when you can help people with the basics, which is, hey, who are you trying to reach out to? Who have you validated to know it actually really is having this issue? And my concern with what I'm seeing happening right now in the marketplace in terms of emerging companies is they go to market with a certain set of assumptions. And some of these assumptions aren't necessarily fully fleshed out and validated. Maybe it happened in one or two instances, but it hasn't happened across like hundreds of data points. And what that poses is as a risk. You're now starting to build a solution to a problem that you haven't fully understood. And the closer you know the problem, the closer that you can understand it and articulate it to various people that are involved in it, the better off you are going to be in terms of transmitting that into a solution. Because inevitably, when it comes to building relationship equity, and I'd say this is probably what I'm most proud of, is when and relationship equity is a lot like a bank account. When you think about people are a lot like bank accounts. When you go to open up a new account, you deposit some money. And then when you want to go purchase something, you withdraw money or use your debit card and you pay for it. However, when you actually go to purchase where you haven't actually deposited enough, there's not enough in there to substantiate the withdrawal. People don't call you back. They don't respond to you. So what I'm most proud of is helping folks kind of build outreach that is more relationship equity focused. And how do you build that trust? So you build that trust because you have a common connection, and then you multiply that by authenticity. You don't show up and be someone that you're not. You're your real self. And when you do that, you build trust. Now, trust over time allows you to cultivate a real relationship. And then if you want to take that relationship and build equity into it, you need to multiply that relationship by value. What do I mean by value? Is helping someone for the sake of helping them, not having a hidden agenda. And when you do that, you build relationship equity. So when people ask me what game I'm in, what business I'm in that business. Because if you want anything to move within healthcare, when you think about innovating within
Yeah.
healthcare, you're talking about people. Okay. So do they have a problem that they actually know that there's a problem? Do they have a willingness to solve it? Two, do they have resources to want to solve it? Not just money, people, time, that type of capital. And thirdly is there enough relationship equity? And I will bet my house on it that any company, any emerging company that's out there that has won a new customer, all three of those factors were there. If there's a customer or a prospect that you didn't end up moving forward, I bet you one or more of those things was not there. So what I'm most proud of is showing this philosophy, showing this principle. A principle, is something that is timeless, that can work across decades. And I've seen this work because I'm a product of it. I've seen it work in my life because I'm not just saying someone that says it. I actually do it every single day. So when you're looking more to deposit, so I think that's what I'm most proud of when it comes to working with emerging companies, ones that embrace this philosophy and actually really practice it, because then it becomes a joy people to go through your sales process because they actually realize that you actually do have the best interest in mind, which is for them to win, for you to win. Like it's everything's aligned. The incentives are all aligned. And they can tell when you're being inauthentic. People are not foolish. They can see it. So I'd say I'm most proud of that. And
Yeah.
Yeah. And Michael, I mean, the ripple effect of what you're talking about is I just experienced this firsthand. So I met you, over a year and a half ago. And one of the first questions you asked me was, how can I help?
yeah,
Right. So that was, and not too many people approach someone like that. How can I help? And what ended up happening was you made lots of introductions, and we're trying to make introductions to you as well. And I'm in Nashville last week, and I had time to come on a Thursday night, and I went through my roster of people I know who are out there, and sure enough, it was one of Michael's introductions to a CEO of a healthcare organization that was meeting with the same decision makers I was meeting with consistently, and we had drinks, and now we're helping each other. And it all goes back to day one of when I first met you, and you remind me so much. Hopefully, our viewers, if they want to pick up a good book to read, there's a book called Never Eat Alone, which is all about how your net work equals your net worth. And you remind me so much of a chapter in that book. There's lots of great chapters, but there's one chapter that specifically speaks to you. And I'd recommend reading that for yourself and for anyone who knows you, because they're going to
appreciate
think
that.
of you
That's
as
very
well.
nice to hear. It feels good to hear that. Yeah, you just you,
Absolutely.
you might as well live it out as opposed to talking it. There's enough talkers out there. And I think those that are really keen on innovation, they they're not spending a lot of time screaming from the rooftops about how awesome they are. What they're actually doing is, if they really want to make change in their organization, is they're building lots and lots of relationship equity across multiple departments, and then they're understanding the problems that are happening, and then they're aligning the right people to those problems that they think have the propensity to actually want to solve them. That's what moves things forward. It's a very unsexy thing to do. It's very hard work. It works.
Michael, what keeps you up at night when you think about the healthcare industry and the future state of healthcare, or when you think about your own company and your mission? Is there anything that jumps out at you?
I just have so many personal experiences. Like, for example, like when my dad was diagnosed with a stage 4 nasopharyngeal carcinoma. I mean, the guy never smoked a cigarette in his life, but we were put in a pretty rough spot. And just sort of seeing how healthcare works, not only just from I'll call it from a vendor perspective, but just from an actual experiential perspective. And I have to say, at the time, so my dad lives in New York, so we went to all the big name places, and we ended up not going to Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center because even though that's probably a top 5 cancer center and arguably in the world, my dad felt more comfortable because of a connection he made with a particular physician that talked about our culture, the Greek culture. And my dad was like, this is the person we're going to. I feel more trusted with that. What I'm very concerned about, keeps me up at night,
Wow.
AI. And I just don't want that to take away from the human element of what we're here to do, is that human beings are meant to be in relationship. Healthcare is a team sport. It's not an individual sport. if I look at the opportunities we have in front of us to not only bring in really cool tech that enables human beings to do what they do best, which is to treat people, to help create better outcomes, to get people healthy and back up and doing the things that they love. That's like what really helps me. When I mentioned about elevating society at large, I really meant that. It's really about the bigger picture. For me, it's never been about, hey, money and this and that and the other thing. Although, money does make the world go around. I have enough. What makes me move is around impact, and it's around mission and significance. And I've been like that my whole entire life. You just want to surround yourself with people like that. So when I meet new people, I immediately tell them what I'm passionate about. And I tell them about access, and I tell them about leadership. And they either get it or they don't get it. And I'm at a stage in my life where I would rather know that up front than invest 6 months and then find that out. So I just tell them. And if they don't align with that, they don't subscribe to that, that's fine. Maybe they're just not my cup of tea.
So speaking about impact, we always like to ask a light question for everybody to get to know you a little better and learn something that's, they can immediately apply to themselves. What's a purchase of $100 or less that you recently made, maybe in the last 6 months or so, that has had a positive impact on your life?
$100 or
And be as
less.
specific as you can. If it's a specific item, the brand, the
Huh.
model, that kind of thing, where you can
Good
find
one.
it.
I'd say it's like this handheld like massager. It's kind of like a Theragun, but it's like the mini version of it. And I don't know about you, but when you're kind of hunched down and you're looking at a computer most of the day, I try to take meetings in the afternoon where I'm like just on the phone and walking
Yeah.
around, but you still kind of get a little tight. This little handheld massager works wonders. You just like literally go here, and then all of a sudden you're just on it and
Yep.
doing it. I mean, I have the bigger one too, which is very helpful
Yeah.
when I go on bike rides or I go on walks and stuff or runs and things of that nature. But I'd say it may be a little over $100, so don't hold me to it. It may be a little more than $100 with inflation and everything. But at the time of purchase, it was underneath $100.
And before we end today's podcast, too, I have to ask. I mean, you grew up around
Yeah.
diners, and we're Chicagoans, where we talk about food often. You think back to like your family in the diner. What was the go-to on the menu that you always were excited about?
All right, so there was a day where I had a 7 year stretch of having an everything bagel toasted with cream cheese and bacon. I did that for 7 years. It was amazing. Every day.
That is a
Uh,
go-to item.
yeah, breakfast items. I'm all about breakfast items. Like nice, really good, legit egg sandwiches. And I don't know what it is about the rolls in New York, but they're different. They are pretty exceptional. So if anyone has experienced the bacon, egg, and cheese from New York
Yeah.
City or that area, I mean, they're very, very hard to find those types of rolls. So when I do go back, that's primarily on the checklist of things to get. But it can't be every time.
Yeah.
It's not like an
Yeah, they
everyday
don't really
thing.
have them.
Great.
Right.
Next time if we get together, we'll make some.
Love it.
Sign me up. I'm down.
Yeah, I mean, so let me
Well,
ask
I
you.
want to
Wait,
thank
wait a
our guest,
second.
Michael
Wait a
Stam.
second. Wait a second. I know we're about to wrap up here, but like I can't be going through here. And usually I ask a bunch of the questions, but at the end of the day, I mean, for you guys, what has been your why? Because I mean, what are you guys both passionate about? I've been very intrigued with you, Jeff, and you, Michael, and
Yeah.
your just the how on the same page both of you guys are. It's really fascinating. Can you just tell the group about that? Because it's very impressive. And I'm not just saying that because I know you a little bit
Yeah.
more, but man, it's really cool to see how you guys
Yeah.
are so aligned.
Yeah. I'm happy to jump in first, and Michael can. We
Sure.
basically share a brain, and we've been partners for almost 25 years now. But it goes back to our why, and I love that you said that. I think about Simon Sinek and start with why. But our passion has always been very similar to yours, which is probably why we get along so well. But it's about helping people. Every one of the companies that Michael and I have started have all been around helping people. Our first company in 1999 was helping people find jobs. Then it was helping people find a place to live. We had a real estate brokerage. Then it was about helping people meet others and get involved in charities with our company called Launch Events. And then, of course, we grew into the space of helping people move because we were so surprised at the lack of support people had when they had to start a new job and move to a new city, and no one was solving the problem other than giving people money. So it all goes back to the feeling at the end of the day when we go on Google and we read Urban reviews and we see there's 400 reviews and everyone's saying they had a fantastic experience, that feeds my why. I get so excited when I know that we're helping people. At the end of the day, that's my passion.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I agree with everything Jeff just said. I couldn't have said it better myself. But I also love that, we're making a really positive impact for these organizations that are ultimately our clients because we're taking this really complicated process that any one of us have ever experienced if you ever moved. You know how stressful it can be. And it's at the same moment, you're also starting a new job often, so it's doubly stressful. And we're trying to just make it a better experience for everyone while simultaneously trying to help these organizations save a lot of money in the process. So it feels good. It's feel good work, and we know we're doing something that's very unique in and of itself and can have a profound impact. So that's what drives me every single day. So thanks for asking that, though. I appreciate it.
And working with having a business partner, having a co-founder. I always talk to so many entrepreneurs who are thinking about starting a company that go find someone who aligns with your moral compass, your values, your ethics, and that fire in the belly that you get when you're looking to solve a problem. And the rest will take care of itself. We have so much fun. We just came off a 3-day weekend, and I was dying to get back to work today. I knew we had this podcast. So I was excited to talk with you, and I'm excited to talk to some of our clients. And there's some good times ahead for all of us.
By the way, I think the same can be said when you're sharing that vision, that passion. The earlier you share it with prospective customers, the better off that you're going to be. If there's anything that's going to be radically changed in terms of like driving innovation, moving ahead, is that level of alignment. And the organizations that really understand your mission, your vision, your values, your purpose, and my question to the audience is like, are you better off doing that sooner, or are you better off doing it later? And if there's one thing that we all have, a finite amount of time on, is like time. Time's kept for us. And I would much rather spend that time with the people that have a level of alignment than not. And again, not discrediting those that don't, but like the organization, like you want to really be in tight with your customers. It's not about a transaction. It's more relational. And maybe I'm just wired that way, so I yearn for that. But I would venture to say that most health organizations, when they look at their vendors, they look at them as vendors. I hate that word. I would hate to be called a vendor. It is literally like not cool. I would much rather have them be like, that is like one of our partners and they are so awesome. We can't even think about what life would be like without them. Like that's the standard. That is the standard. That is the minimum. The minimum. So it's like be excellent in everything you can be excellent. On paper, right. I'm like a pretty average person. Straight up, average person. It's just that I decided that one day, like, being average sucked. So I wanted to do a lot better. So I just started and I just continued to make it happen. And like I said, my superpower is consistency. So you want to have someone do something for a long stretch of time and is like on it, I'm the guy. But most people don't do that. That's the problem. And with most startups, unfortunately, they have a finite amount of runway. And they can't do it for long stretches. But man, if you have an 18-month stretch, you better be consistent as all heck. So anyhow, super fun being here.
Well, anyways, we want to thank Michael Stamatinos for joining us today on the UB on the Move podcast. And we will look forward to seeing you on our next episode.